Hey y'all, welcome back to Exile Wargaming, where today, and as always, we're going to be talking about Harlequins, specifically in a battle report against the new World Eaters in the Berserker Warband Detachment. Now we're going to be trying something a little bit different today than our standard MSU style Harlequin approach. While traditionally we want to utilize a ton of units and OC to score a ton of secondary points, move block, and deny our opponent's primary, this list is more focused on dealing some damage and trying to run away with the game early on, hopefully getting us a little higher in the points in a competitive tournament scene. So we have three troop masters, one with Chegarax Coil. He will be attached to an 11-man unit of troops. We also have a Shadow Seer with the Mistweave Cloak attached to a 12-man unit of troops, most likely infiltrating into the midboard. We're also bringing a Solitaire. There is no Death Jester in this list. We're bringing 4 units of 5 troops. 2 of those units will be inside of Starweavers. The other 2 units will be attached to our other 2 troop masters inside of 2 Falcons. We're bringing a unit of Rangers to either move block or just be something that cheap can hold our home field objective, and then our tried and true 2 units of Fire Dragons with a Wave Serpent. Now we are coming in at only 15 total units, but we're at 1995 points. Now, our opponent is bringing the new World Eaters in the Berserker Warband Detachment. What this does, it gives all of their troops +2 strength and +1 attack on the charge, plus a ton of other benefits. Now, World Eaters kind of operate a little similar to Eldar in that they have a whole bunch of tricks in their army rule. They can get a 6-inch pile in and consolidate. They can reroll their advances. They can give all their units lethal or sustained or devastating wounds, or they can get, I believe, a fight on death on 4+. But most of these things are kind of irrelevant outside of sustained hits, the pile in and reroll charges against something like Harlequins. So when we get into their stratagems, it becomes a little bit more evident that they don't have a ton there to use here as well. They get sticky objectives on death. They get +1 AP on units in melee, which doesn't matter to us because everything that we have has a 4+ invulnerable save. They get -1 damage in the fight phase, but most of our attacks are already 1 damage. Or they can get an additional Blessings of Corn roll. They can get Advance in Charge with their Berserkers, which is a pretty big deal. And they can also auto 8 Blood Surge with their Corn Berserkers as well. So there's a lot that this unit can do. Their threat range is pretty incredible. It'll be interesting to see exactly how we tackle this moving forward. But our opponent is bringing Lord Invocatus attached to 20 Corn Berserkers in 1 giant brick. Now they can deep strike. Lord Invocatus has 10-inch move, I believe, and he can move the unit through walls and terrain and everything else. He's bringing 3 units of 6 8-bound, 10 Jackals, 8 Goremongers, which can infiltrate into the midboard, 3 units of 2 Spawn. Spawn are kind of crazy. Now, I believe they get like a 9-inch scout. They have a 10 or 12-inch move, and they can advance in charge, so they can go fight you on the first turn wherever it is you want to be. And then he's bringing 2 Hellbrutes. Now, one of the Hellbrutes had a fist and a scourge, and I think the scourge had like 10 attacks. It would be 12 on the charge. And the other Hellbrute had 2 fists, so we also got 2 flamers. Now, the fists will and the Scourge will get 2 extra attacks because he's using 2 close combat units, as far as I can tell at this point. So these will be interesting. If you attack the Hellbrute first, you don't kill it. It then gets to attack you back every time it's hit. So it just starts steamrolling our units if we place too many of them together and they utilize that 6-inch pile and consolidate. So our opponent today, I know this list isn't hyper competitive, but I think he's just trying out a few different options to see if they're going to be viable moving forward. This list is coming in at 11 total units at 2,000 points on the nose. Now we're going to be playing Mission C, which is Linchpin, Fog of War, and Tipping Point style deployment on GW Terrain Layout 3. Now I have not played Terrain Layout 3 outside of Sweeping Engagement or Dawn of War. This will be very interesting. Now, getting into deployment, we are very fortunate and get to deploy first. What we want to do is block our opponent, all of their scout moves, whatever it may be, on the early turns. Now, our opponent opted to put their 20-man unit of Berserks with Lord Invocatus into reserves, as well as a Hellbrute. Now, what they ended up doing is positioning everything back here because our first deployment was the Shadow Seer with the Mistweave, and we just strung them out across the entirety of the midboard. What we want to try to do is block the scout moves from the spawn on the side here, but most importantly, we want to make sure that our opponent can't just stage and push everything that we have on the early turns. We do have access to a reactive move. If I wasn't overly concerned about them potentially dropping any of their scout moves or a whole bunch of them on one flank, I would have put these guys back a little bit closer to this terrain so that we can just push back with that reactive move if they got close and 1-inch this wall. Unfortunately, I believe they had too many scout options. I believe all the 8-bound scout as well. So this was our best chance to kind of keep them from being in our face right off the bat. So we have this unit here in the middle. We have our Falcon outside over here, just ready to push up towards the midfield objective or this outer objective, depending on what our opponent does. We have another Star Weaver down here. This is just to kind of control some space and maybe steal some OC early on. Whatever our opponent does, we can kind of react with this unit in the midboard anyway. Now, we are not putting our Fire Dragons inside of the Wave Serpent this game. I feel like it's just a waste. They don't have a bunch of incredible targets they can go after. I do not need to push this out like a bullet and just start blasting tanks. I'm going to end up putting the Troop Master with Chegarex Coil and his big brick inside of this Wave Serpent just to protect them early on. If I want to push up and stage, we can absolutely do that. Maybe we lose a couple units or a couple models out of this unit here. We have the troops disembarked, then we can reactive move all of these troops back into the Wave Serpent and kind of just protect them activation wise from our opponent, since they don't have really any shooting at all. There's a few flamers and then all the pistols that come with the Khorne Berserkers. Up top here, we're just going to try to protect our expansion objective with the Fire Dragons, unit of troops and a Star Weaver, and then another Falcon this way, and then the Rangers are holding our home field objective. We don't have anything in reserve. We also have the Solitaire right in the middle here. If our opponent wants to get cheeky with some spawn, they're gonna have to get into combat with him as well. So overall, I think we got a pretty sound strategy going into this, but it's really going to depend on who goes first and what our opponent does. They pretty much just stage with a bunch of symmetry. I ended up putting the Goremongers around the 8-bound in the front here, I guess so that if he really needed to, he can block our Harlequin troop, depending on what our charge is, from getting into combat with the 8-bound. So we'd have to fight the Goremongers, and then the 8-bound can come back afterwards. But he has a Hellbrute up here, a unit of Spawn here, another unit of 8-bound back here with Jackals on the home field objective, then another unit of 8-bound over here with 2 more units of Spawn. Now our opponent wins the turn 1 dice roll and has to go first. He ends up moving up a bunch of his units with Scout. I believe the Spawn got up here, but they couldn't get within 9 inches of our troop over on this side, so they didn't get to go too far. Same thing with this unit down here, and then this other unit of Spawn ended up just shifting over here. The Goremongers did not move in the Scout phase. I just took the picture afterwards, but they're going to end up moving up into this midboard as well. Now, on our opponent's turn 1, they draw Area Denial and Containment. Now, they're going to easily be able to get Containment, I believe, with these 8-bound up here. And then they're going to get Area Denial by just pushing towards the midboard. They're going to contain with this other unit of 8-bound down here. So 6 easy points. Now, our opponent ends up moving up the Goremongers, 2 units of Spawn, and then the 8-bound towards this midboard. The 8-bound that were behind cover over here end up scouting and moving out to this section of the board, and then the Hellbrute pushes up as well. The Spawn that had scouted earlier ends up using its advance roll and gets right in our face over here, looking to take out the Fire Dragons, maybe tag a few other things over here afterwards. But we end up utilizing our reactive move to push our Harlequins back as close as we can to this wall. We just want to make sure that we are not giving our opponent a chance for everything they have that may charge us to activate, right? If one of these units of spawn comes in, they kill 4 Harlequins, we are 1-inched on the wall back here as well. We will fall out of combat to anything else that may charge in beyond this. That's the goal of this at this point. But our opponent ends up doing something pretty cheeky in the shooting phase and throws its Hellbrute Flamers into our Harlequin troop, allowing us to utilize the battle focus move as well. And we get a 5, I believe, on this, and we're able to pull all of these units back here. Unfortunately, there were 2 Harlequin troops who weren't going to be able to get into cover and kind of 1-inch that wall. So they're going to end up being right here, but it limits our opponent's ability to interact with us on this first charge. Now he ends up making the charge roll with both units of spawn. He does not make anything with the Goremongers, and then the unit of spawn on top ends up getting into combat with the Fire Dragons, bringing all of them down except for the Exarch, I believe, on 2 wounds remaining. Now these spawn ended up killing these 2 Harlequin troop. We did -1 to hit, even though he had sustained hits on this turn. They were hitting on 5s, and we made quite a few saves. So we only lost 2 of our Harlequin troops this turn, and then we lost another 1 or 2 from the Hellbrute Flamer early on. So this ended up pulling this unit of Harlequin troops out of combat, so this other unit was not able to fight. It is going to get them 2 points on area denial, however, at the end of the turn. Now in our turn 1, we end up drawing the God secondaries in area denial and secure no man's land. Now we're trying something a little bit different with this list, so this is much more of a stress test than anything else. But what we ended up doing is pushing up both units of our Harlequin troops. We disembark one of these units out of the Wave Serpent, the one with the Troop Master and Chegarax Coil, to come all the way out over here, and then the Shadow Seers unit as well, I believe with 8 or 9 troops still left over, is going to push up to this midboard. The Fire Dragons are just going to take this angle onto one of these units, and then the Wave Serpent is going to try and put some shots down here and into the spawn as well. Our unit of Harlequin troops gets out of the Star Weaver over here. On these spawn, they're just going to put some fusion pistols into it, and then this Falcon is just going to get some good sight lines as well afterwards. Our Star Weaver down at the bottom of the board is going to push up towards this objective. They only have a few OC on it, and then we're also going to push our Falcon with Troop and Troop Master here afterwards. So we're just going to contest this objective, try to whittle down this force. We are not going to be making any charges this turn, but those vectored engines do some pretty good work. Now, starting at the top, we ended up firing into the spawn up here with the Harlequin troops. They're going to be able to charge afterwards and finish this unit off. This Falcon ends up bringing the Hellbrute down to just 1 wound remaining. Our unit of big Harlequin troops with the Troop Master and Chegarax Coil end up bringing down a unit of spawn, and then our Fire Dragons fire into the other unit. Now, unbeknownst to me, spawn do not have a 5+ invulnerable save. They have a 5+ feel no pain only, and they should have fallen. Unfortunately, we got this wrong. So the Fire Dragons were only able to bring down 1 of these afterwards. Everything else, just the firepower here, went into the spawn. This Falcon came out, disembarked its troops. We shot into the 8-bound. We also got a couple long-range fusion pistol shots. I believe only 2 were able to make contact into the 8-bound. We bring down 3 of them in conjunction with this other unit of troops shooting their fusion pistols and the Star Weaver. So we were able to wipe off a good bit over here. Our opponent ended up bringing down, I believe, the World Eaters on the objective first, so that our other fusion pistols fell out of range back here and that we maybe weren't in melter range. So you're going to see them pull off the objective, but it didn't matter anyway because they were not going to get that point moving forward. Now, important to note, we did blitz the Solitaire this turn right here in order to try to get into these Goremongers, wipe this unit, and then allow our Shadow Seer and troop master units to pile into the 8-pound afterwards. So in the fight phase, we did just that. The Solitaire moved in, cleared the Goremongers, who also got hit with a grenade from a Troop Master earlier on in the turn. The Shadowseer unit then piled in. The Troop Master unit with Chegrak's Coil ended up dropping 6 mortal wounds on this unit. So this unit dealt 9 mortal wounds before they even got to the fight phase. And then we threw over 100 attacks into the 8-bound. It was pretty wild. They came down with mortal wounds alone. So at the end of this turn, we almost killed a Hellbrute. We brought down almost 3 units of Chaos Spawn, a unit of Goremongers, and a unit of Exalted 8-bound, as well as halved another one. This was a pretty huge turn 1 for us. What we're going to end up doing is moving the Shadowseers unit up a little bit here to try to protect the Solitaire, and then we're going to use our Troop Masters, 6-inch Pile and Consolidate to bring them back over here behind cover and onto the midboard. Now, in our opponent's turn 2, they end up drawing Established Locust and Secure No Man's Land. Now, they can absolutely get Secure No Man's Land, but Established Locust seems like kind of a waste for 2 points at this point in time when they have to keep pace on the board. So he ends up pushing his Hellbrute up to try to get into this Falcon. He ends up moving the 8-bound that were over here to get into our Shadowseer with the Mistweave, but we are 1-inching the wall, so it's going to be a little bit tricky for all of them to get into combat. He ends up moving up his Jackals to this portion of the board, and then we reactive move our troops down. They may have reactive moved off the 8-bound as well. We just don't want to give him 2 easy charges to get into. But the Jackals did sticky the home field, and they're going to start pushing forward as well. And then they ended up having to deep strike the Berserkers. Now, he had 2 options for the Berserkers. It was pretty much anywhere back here or right here. The only issue with right here is we can collapse the majority of our force in on them pretty quickly if it's something that they wanted to do. So essentially, we would be able to just move almost everything we can up here because we have such a phenomenal movement. Or he can end up just getting move blocked up here for a turn, and then we can take over the rest of the board and then clap back on him afterwards. We kind of talked this through what made the most sense and came to the conclusion he did at least that he was going to attempt to just take the board 1 step at a time, this objective through the midboard, and just hope that he can score enough points and be durable enough until the end game. So this reactive move, we've already used it twice. The 8-bound here are going to end up moving up just a little bit so that they can end up getting a charge, and then the Hellbrute comes in 9 inches away from this Starweaver and these troops as well. At the end of this, there was a lot going on. But it's really going to come down to him making it happen in the fight phase. So the 8-bound in the middle end up getting into combat with the Shadowseer. They wipe the entire unit except for the Shadowseer, who is left on 2 wounds remaining. In the clapback, though, we are able to, I believe we may have fought on death, or maybe it was just the Shadowseer fighting himself, brought down 1 of the 8-bound, and then they lost another one by failing a hazardous test into this unit. So it's already paying for itself. We traded 15 points in a Mistweave for 50-point 8-bound. Not too bad. In the bottom, they end up charging with the 8-bound. They used reroll charges, I believe, this turn. The Hellbrute failed to get the 9-inch charge into the Starweaver as well. But these guys were getting sustained hits, I believe, and they should have been hitting on 2s, but we did -1 to hit. Unfortunately, he did not roll very well, and we did roll very well in our saves, so we only brought down 4 of our Harlequin troop. We left the Troop Master and the lead player afterwards. So our opponent did some solid work. They were able to bring down 4 Harlequin troops over here, 7 or 8 of them over here, but they still ended up losing 3 8-bound total at the end of their turn. Now in our turn 2, we're still only able to score 8 on primary because our opponent destroyed the Falcon up top with the Hellbrute, got back onto this objective. We were not holding the middle objective. It got contested. And then we held this down here. But we draw recover assets and marked for death. Our opponent only had this Hellbrute, this unit of 8 bound remaining, then the unit of Jackals, and this unit plus the Hellbrute. So there weren't many great targets. I believe he selected this unit of 8 bound up here, these cats, and this Hellbrute down here, and we were able to absolutely bring down a ton of them. So starting from the top, we ended up moving our troop out of the Star Weaver. Our lone Fire Dragon Exarch ends up pushing up with no Overwatch as well, and they are able to bring down this Hellbrute. Down low, these Fire Dragons are able to bring down this spawn. Finally, it should have been brought down in the first turn, but here we go. The unit of 8 bound over here ended up getting shot down by the Falcon and the Star Weaver, and then this unit of troops did a ridiculous amount of damage into this Hellbrute. I believe we did 8 damage with one of the fusion pistols. Fusion pistols are really good into toughness 8, by the way, and then another 3 with another one, more than enough to bring him down. And then I believe he was left at 1 wound. We fired the Bright Lance from the Falcon in, and then everything else, the pulse lasers, went into these 8 bounds. So we're able to bring down these guys, the Hellbrutes, this spawn, this Hellbrute, and then our Harlequin troop that was in combat with the 8 bound used fallback, shoot and charge on the troop master and the lead player that were remaining down here. They're going to go after the Jackals, and then the Chegarex coil unit ended up moving in to get into combat with these 8 bound. Unfortunately, 3 of the 8 bound fell to fusion pistols, and we're going to have 1 guy left over at the end. In the charge phase, we just move back into the last remaining 8 bound over here. We're able to bring them down with mortals alone, and then we're just going to consolidate backwards onto this point. And then this unit of Harlequin troops is going to push into these Jackals. Unfortunately, they whiffed on a ton of their attacks, and they're only able to bring down 4 of them. They get smacked back and kill a lead player, and then they put a wound or 2 onto our troop master. The Shadow Seer fell back earlier in the turn just to be something that they have to deal with afterwards. I didn't really have any great use for him beyond this, but we are going to end up scoring on Marked for Death, which is 5 points, and then we're going to get Recover Assets for 3. In our opponent's turn 3, they have this giant brick left over, and that is pretty much it. They end up moving the unit of Jackals back behind this wall. They fall back. They shoot down the troop master. I think they throw grenades at the Shadow Seer, and then they're going to position themselves to get into combat over here. Now, at this point, we only had 1 CP, and our option was to try and either reactive move this unit backwards or heroically intervene with the Solitaire or try to resurrect the Troop Master afterwards. There were a lot of different things that we could do. In the charge phase, our opponent pushes everything forward, tagging as much as possible. They get a whole bunch of units into combat with our troops, and then they tag the Falcon as well, taking over this bottom objective. Now, we heroically intervene with the Solitaire and then choose fight on death with our Harlequin troop afterwards. After seeing how things went, I really do think that this was the best possible scenario. We were able to bring down, I believe, 5 or 6 of these Khorne Berserkers in this combat, and anything that we can do to start whittling this unit away will pay itself back in dividends. Unfortunately for our opponent, at the end of it all, they were not able to bring down the Falcon. They were only able to bring him down to 1 wound remaining, which is a pretty big deal for us, and the Solitaire survived. He only had 1 or 2 guys go into them, rolled pretty poorly, and we did roll pretty well on our saves, but we didn't take a single wound with that Solitaire. Now in our turn 3, we end up getting another 8 on primary, and then draw engage on all fronts and bring it down as our secondaries. Now we really need some extra CP, so I am fine getting rid of bring it down at this point. But this turn was kind of a conundrum for us. I knew I wanted to score. We wanted to move block and get as many points as possible as we could. But this unit having access to a 6-inch pile in, a ton of 2 wound models and Invocatus with a ridiculous threat range, it kind of wrapped my brain for a good bit. So what we ended up doing is originally I was going to try to push up all of our troops and just engage, but then I thought maybe we have more damage available to us if we get into the shooting phase. We do have a lot of shuriken cannons left. The Falcon is left. These fire dragons can do a good bit. And then all of our other pistols, like neuro pistols, are pretty dang good into Marines. So I thought we'd bring down a few more of them than that. We ended up moving out this unit of troops and this Star Weaver over here. We are that 9 inches away, so they cannot blood surge into us, but someone does need to come closer to us. And then we get some range on these jackals back here. So we end up putting our shuriken cannon from this Star Weaver into this unit right here. And then our opponent ends up having to blood surge afterwards. And in kind of a weird move, he elected to keep his lone CP, and he rolled his blood surge, and he ended up only getting a 6 on that. So instead of pushing forward, because he wasn't going to get in range of anything, and he was just bringing himself into closer range of us charging him, he ended up moving them backwards. So I guess we weren't going to have as many angles to shoot or whatever it may be. So one of the Star Weavers is able to bring down 2 of the Berserkers. We shoot these remaining pistols into them over here. The Falcon fires in, the Rangers get to fire in, and then this Wave Serpent gets to fire in as well. And we are able to bring down another 6 of them. So I believe this what he's got left over is 8 or 9 Khorne Berserkers with Invocatus, which is much more easily manageable for us. And in the charge phase, we end up just picking up the jackals over here, giving our opponent something they either have to deal with and move their forces back or ignore, so we can continually score secondaries and then come back on this point for primary afterwards. In our opponent's turn 4, they ended up scoring a 13 on secondaries, which was pretty good for them, but then drew Sabotage and Cleanse. He tried to get rid of Sabotage, drew Call the Horde, it's not active, and then got Overwhelming Force. Now he is going to be able to kill some units on objectives, and hopefully make something happen, but he ends up pushing his force all the way forward. They get that advance in charge. Again, we use the reactive move for the 3rd or 4th time, I believe, with our Harlequin troops, with the Troop Master to get back inside of this Wave Serpent. It's all about just activation locking our opponent at this point in time. They end up moving in everything with no choice but to get into combat with the Solitaire. The Solitaire's able to bring down, I believe, 2 of the Khorne Berserkers, and then they bring down all the Fire Dragons and the Solitaire himself, and the Wave Serpent comes down to just 3 wounds remaining. In our turn 4, we end up drawing no prisoners and Sabotage. So we are going to Sabotage back here with the Star Weaver on our opponent's home field objective. And then we're just going to get out all of our remaining troops. We're going to try to push whatever we can into combat. We did resurrect the Solitaire, so he is back. And the Falcon was in combat with the Berserkers. So it's going to fire in, which is pretty nice for us. It does a ridiculous amount of work. I believe between the Wave Serpent and the Falcon, we are able to bring down 5 of the Khorne Berserkers, and everything else is just going to charge. So the World Eaters end up falling to a Solitaire and a Troop Master, a fitting end to get into combat with Invocatus. And to make matters worse, we end up drawing Assassination and Containment on our final turn. We're going to be able to get both of those very easily, combining ourselves for 21 secondary points in both turn 4 and turn 5. So at the end of the day, we walk away the victor 89-48. Let's go. This list felt pretty incredible. I have not been able to get the Quins back on the board since our last GT. Work, life, everything has just kind of taken over, and coming back to a game like this just felt amazing. Those big bricks felt solid, and they were honestly relatively durable with -1 to hit. Now, I know we only have one wound, but that -1 to hit combined with the 4+ invulnerable saves is pretty solid at keeping your opponent tied up in combat and always leaves you, it felt like, with at least a couple fusion pistols afterwards or something to interact with grenades, or you can fall back, shoot and charge a small unit and continually just gain value from them. The Troop Master with Chegarex Coil was ridiculous. Being able to throw grenades and then drop 9 mortals before you even swing your devastating wound weapons was really, really good. The Shadow Seer itself was perfect in this matchup. Since my last tournament, where I played Knights, Custodes, Death Guard, Imperial Guard, and Demons, I was really looking for something to kind of control the midboard or infiltrate and keep our opponent pushed back, keep their scout moves from abusing us, or their own infiltrators as well. And this really just served the trick. Now, it was a super ridiculously expensive screen to put out there in the early game, but combined with the reactive move, it made a lot of sense and really kind of changed the dynamic of this game for us. Having 4 hammers overall, the Shadow Seer brick, the Troop Master brick, and then the 2 Troop Masters and the Falcons, felt really, really good as well. I felt like I had the ability to trade 1v1 into anything, as opposed to our last list where we really still had to combo our fire. This allowed us to just kind of take control of sections of the board and just provide threats that our opponent had to work around, instead of just kind of steamrolling forward and then us saving our units afterwards to just contest throughout the course of the game. I felt like we had an ability to just take over really quick if our opponent made a mistake, like moving too close into engagement range. Overall, the Trickster's retort felt like the MVP. I think we reactive moved 4 times over the course of this game. I really wished I had more CP, but that was a big game changer as well. I have not played on Terrain Layout 3 in tipping points or search and destroy style deployment, or even like Hammer and Anvil, and that midfield brick of terrain was really, really nice to be able to kind of 1-inch and keep our opponent from engaging us pretty regularly. The Wave Serpent felt really good and versatile still. I like that we have the ability to put the Fire Dragons in them if we need to use them as a bullet to just go tackle a demon or a Rogel Dorn. But I also, like something in this matchup, liked them to protect our troop unit or just give it extra movement. Also, having it around to be able to reactive move into afterwards felt like a really good option, and there's a couple plays throughout this game that I wish I would have done that. I wish the turn that our opponent attacked our unit of troops on the midboard, I think it was turn 3, with their big unit of Khorne Berserkers, I wish I would have just pushed the Wave Serpent up into that terrain and fell them back into it afterwards. And then our opponent would have no choice but to try to wrap the Wave Serpent, and then our troops can hopefully get out afterwards and fight from there. So we would have had 2 bricks going into them at that point. But overall, this game felt like it was entirely based on movement, and both of us had very long threat ranges. Our opponent could move 10 inches, advance, or charge, but they had a scout 6 inches with the 8 bound, then a move of 10 inches, then a charge that they can reroll. That's pretty big. And then the Khorne Berserkers get 10 with Invocatus, at least he does, and advance and charge. It was just kind of ridiculous how far we can go. But then we also have, a pretty solid about 13 inches of move when we're getting out of our transport. So we had a good bit. It just meant that we couldn't play in the open, and we really had to take advantage of the terrain. Fortunately, we have those 25 millimeter bases, and we get to take advantage, move through the walls, attack our opponent whenever we wanted, but they couldn't attack us. I think our opponent should have held back a few spawn for actions, secondaries, maybe to deal with some of our trash on the upper objectives. It really just enabled us to kind of take the fight to them too quickly. That 20-inch unit of Berserkers with the 8-inch Blood Surge, Advance and Charge, access to rerolls is really, really intimidating and really difficult to play around for us. We don't get to use our fusion pistols in this matchup against a unit like that. We barely get to use our Neuro pistols and Shuriken pistols. it makes for a tricky game when that unit is just so big and can swing anywhere on the board. We were very, very fortunate though in that we were able to deploy first. If our opponent was able to deploy first, they put those goremongers in the midboard, we would have had to deploy our army in an entirely different fashion. We probably would have been held up inside of our deployment zone and just waited for our opponent and had to make a big alpha strike and hope that we just did enough damage. I don't know what would have happened if the Berserkers started on the board. It may have been a very, very different game, but who knows? We may have just been able to move block them with one of our units like we were intending on doing, right? Flip belts are pretty good. We can, move through enemy models in the charge phase, do a couple other things, and just kind of section off certain portions of the board. But who knows? Overall, I enjoyed the list. We'll definitely be trying this a few more times, and I want to see if I can really kind of adapt my playstyle. Our old playstyle, or my traditional, is to just kind of contest and do as much as we have to make something happen over the course of the game. But these games feel like a grind and is very difficult to get high scoring points in this. What we want to do is win a tournament, and fortunately, just getting wins a lot of times isn't enough. So I want to find something that's going to let us score, 90 to 100 points in every single game, and just have some fun putting as many quins as we can out there. But guys, thanks again. I hope you enjoyed. This matchup was so much fun for me. I did not really see it going this way. I don't know what I expected. I think I thought the 8-bound were going to be a little bit more durable than they actually were, but I am happy to see that there are some options in a different variety of play for Harlequins without having to dive too deep into the Eldari Codex. But I know it's been a while since my last video. As I said earlier, sometimes life just takes over, but I appreciate you all so much. If you like the videos, please like, share, subscribe, comment, join the Discord. We have an amazing group of individuals in there that I love hearing from every single day. But thanks again, and I'll see you all in the next video.